The chamber of the Galactic Council had never been quiet. For 6,000 cycles, its domed hall had pulsed with voices, translators humming, species arguing in frequencies that bent air and light alike. Diplomacy was noise. Order was noise. Power announced itself loudly. Until the moment humanity went silent. Supreme Envoy Kael'Ter felt it before the confirmation arrived. A pressure, subtle but unmistakable, rolled through the chamber. The human seats along the lower arc dimmed, their holographic banners fading to black. No delegates rose. No aides whispered. The signal beacons that maintained real-time diplomatic linkage with Sol blinked once, then vanished. Kael's crest stiffened. "Report," he demanded. A dozen sub-minds answered at once. Their tones overlapped, clipped and uncertain. "All human channels unresponsive. Treaty relays offline. Quantum entanglement handshake severed. No precursor warning detected." The words landed heavier than any declaration of war. Councillor Zeldin of the Virex leaned forward, chitin clicking. "That is impossible. Humans do not disengage without theatrics. They threaten," another councillor added. "They posture. They shout." Kael did not respond. His attention was fixed on the central display, where the familiar blue-white spiral of human-controlled space had begun to fracture. Borders that once glowed steady now pulsed erratically, then went dark, system by system. This was not protest. This was erasure. "Recall history," Kael said at last, his voice low. "When was the last time a member species cut all diplomatic contact?" A pause followed. Even the Elder Archives hesitated. "Never," the chamber finally answered itself. Across the spiral arm, on a world the Council map still labeled Sol 3, Admiral Elias Rourke stood in a room equally silent. The Strategic Command Nexus lay deep beneath the Himalayan plateau, layered in stone, alloys, and quantum shielding. Here, no holograms flickered unnecessarily. No ambient light softened the edges. The humans had learned long ago that comfort dulled judgment. Rourke rested both hands on the obsidian table, its surface alive with restrained data. He was 61, his hair iron gray, his posture unbent. The scars along his knuckles were old, earned before humanity had ever left its cradle. Around him sat the architects of the decision now rippling across the galaxy. Fleet marshals. Intelligence directors. Civilian liaisons who no longer bothered pretending this was merely a military moment. Dr. Amara Voss broke the stillness. "The final relay is down. There is no residual handshake. To them, we no longer exist." Rourke nodded. "Good." The word carried no triumph. A younger officer shifted uneasily. "Sir, once the Council confirms intent." "They already have," Rourke said. "They just don't want to believe it." On the far wall, a projection activated. Not a map of stars, but a sequence of images. Colonies burned. Civilian ships dissected by inspection fleets. Arbitration rulings where human testimony had been misinterpreted into irrelevance. Treaties revised unilaterally, always framed as necessary adjustments. 312 incidents, Rourke said. "That's the number the Council recognizes. The number we recorded is higher." Amara's jaw tightened. "They never called it war. They never had to," Rourke replied. "They called it procedure." A silence followed, heavier than the one before. "We tried every path," Amara said quietly. "Appeals. Oversight committees. Joint investigations." Rourke's eyes hardened. "And each time, they reminded us we were young. Emotional. Unseasoned." He straightened. "Humanity is done auditioning for acceptance." A soft chime echoed through the chamber. The final authorization request hovered above the table. A single line of text. Protocol Black Veil, execute. Rourke did not hesitate. His biometric signature flared, sealing the command. "History will mark this moment," the young officer said. "As escalation." Rourke met his gaze. "No. It will mark it as clarity." Back in the Galactic Council, clarity arrived like a blade. A scout collective burst into the chamber, its composite voice fractured. Emergency update. Human fleet movements detected. Kale's eyes snapped to the display. They've reactivated channels? No, the scout replied. They've activated everything else. Across the map, human systems lit again, not with diplomatic blue, but with tactical crimson. Shipyards long believed dormant bloomed with activity. Orbital arrays reoriented. Jump corridors once shared now collapsed behind encrypted barriers. They're mobilizing, Zell then hissed. This violates 17 Accords. Kale's mandibles tightened. Accords require participants. A new signal cut through the chamber. Not a hail. Not a plea. A broadcast. Every receiver in the council hall lit simultaneously, bypassing standard translation filters. The voice that followed was human, unadorned, and unmistakably calm. This message is not a negotiation. Kale recognized the tone immediately. It was not the voice of a politician. It was the voice of command. For 2 centuries, humanity engaged in good faith. We submitted to your courts. We opened our borders. We trusted your assurances. The image resolved into Admiral Rourke's face. Unsmiling. Steady. You exploited that trust. You measured restraint as weakness. You mistook patience for permission. Counselors shouted. Demanded response rights. The system ignored them. As of this transmission, Rourke continued, all treaties between humanity and the Galactic Council are void. All shared corridors are closed. All joint jurisdictions terminated. He paused, not for effect, but precision. You will receive no further explanations. No warnings. No appeals. Kale rose to his full height. Admiral Rourke, this course invites annihilation. Rourke's gaze did not flicker. We evaluated that risk. A faint, almost imperceptible shift in his expression followed. Not arrogance. Resolve. We found it acceptable. The broadcast ended. The silence that followed was different from before. It was not confusion. It was fear. For the first time since the Council's founding, an entire species had not asked for a seat at the table. They had flipped it over and walked away. And somewhere in the dark between stars, humanity was no longer asking what the galaxy would allow. They were preparing to decide what it would endure. The first consequence of humanity's silence was not war. It was confusion. Across 1,000 systems, shipping routes flickered, recalculated, then collapsed. Cargo convoys halted mid-jump, spat back into unstable margins. Diplomatic couriers found their channels answered only by automated warnings, precise and unyielding. Sole territory. Transit denied. On the frontier world of Ultra Prime, the denial nearly became a catastrophe. The colony hung above a yellow dwarf, its orbital stations stitched together by aging tethers and stubborn engineering. Ultra survived on imports. Water. Medicine. Reactor fuel. When the main corridor closed, the supply convoy vanished into uncertainty, and panic rippled through civilian networks faster than any official statement. Captain Marichin felt it in the pit of her stomach as the alert lit her bridge. Status, she said, already rising from her chair. Her tactical officer, Jalen, flicked through cascading data. Convoy Theta 7 is stranded in subspace sheer near the rift chains. Their jump stabilizers are degrading. If they don't re-anchor soon, they'll scatter. Mira exhaled slowly. Probability of Council assistance? Minimal. Their patrols rerouted towards Sol borders. They're fortifying. Then we go, Mira said. Captain. Jalen hesitated. That region isn't cleared. Neither was Earth's atmosphere, Mira replied. Set course. The Resolute Dawn detached from its moorings and slid into the dark, its engines whispering as spacetime bent around its hull. Unlike Council vessels, which relied on fixed corridors, human ships carved their own paths, guided by predictive gravimetric models refined through relentless trial. Minutes into the jump, turbulence clawed at the ship. Consoles shimmered. Artificial gravity lagged, then snapped back. Stabilizers holding, Jalen reported. Push through, Mira said. Theta 7 doesn't have that luxury. When they emerged, the convoy drifted in fractured formation, 3 freighters tumbling slowly, their drives flickering like wounded stars. A hail crackled in. This is Freighter Helios 9. We thought you weren't coming. Mira allowed herself a thin smile. Human ships have a habit of showing up when things get uncomfortable. Within an hour, the convoy was anchored and escorted towards safer lanes. Medical teams crossed in shuttles. Engineers stabilized drives. The crisis ebbed. But the message was already spreading. Humanity was not retreating. They were repositioning. In the Galactic Council chamber, repositioning translated into alarm. Kael'Tur stood before a projection web thicker than he had ever seen. Each strand represented a closed corridor, a redirected patrol, a delayed trade flow. The spiral had begun to snarl. They're bypassing our routes entirely, Counselor Zeldin said, mandibles clicking in agitation. They've mapped stable passage through regions we declared impassable. Kael studied the data. Declared impassable, or inconvenient? Zeldin bristled. We restricted them for safety. Kael did not argue. The distinction no longer mattered. A new signal flared. Civilian distress. Non-human. A merchant fleet caught between pirate raiders and a collapsed jump node. Council response? Kael asked. 2 cycles out. An aide replied. Nearest enforcement group is redeploying. Kael hesitated, then issued a quiet order. Transmit coordinates to the human border relay. Several counselors stared. You cannot be serious, Zeldin said. They are no longer signatories. They are still sentient, Kael answered. The relay pulsed once. Then twice. The response came in under 8 minutes. ETA, 23 minutes. Hold position. The chamber fell silent. 3 star systems away, Admiral Rourke watched similar reports stack across his command wall. Rescue operations. Escort missions. Medical drops. All executed without fanfare, without broadcast. They're testing us, Amara said beside him. They're studying us, Rourke corrected. And discovering something uncomfortable. That we don't need them. That they need us less than they thought, he said. A tactical officer turned. Sir, Council Patrol Group Delta is shadowing our convoy movements. They're staying just inside their jurisdiction. Rourke nodded. Let them observe. You're not concerned about escalation? Rourke's gaze remained on the data. Escalation requires mutual appetite. They're not hungry yet. Yet? They will be. Amara studied him. You're certain this path holds? No, Rourke admitted. But the old one led nowhere. A pause followed, weighted with the gravity of decisions made without permission. Elsewhere, not all reactions were measured. In the Carrick's expanse, Warlord Sarin of the Virex Warcasts watched human patrol vectors breach what he considered sacred dominance. His fleets had controlled those lanes for centuries, extracting tolls disguised as security levies. Now the tolls vanished. Deploy interdiction wing, Sarin commanded. Target? His subordinate asked. Human conva. Demonstrate consequence. The strike group launched in disciplined formation, cutting across dark space toward a medical flotilla bound for a famine-stricken moon. The ambush unfolded with precision. Gravity snares flared. Energy nets rippled. But the human response was faster. From the shadows, 2 escort cruisers pivoted, not to attack, but to interpose. Defensive fields blossomed, folding the incoming barrage harmlessly into warp spacetime. Open channel, Captain Mira ordered from the Resolute Dawn, now leading the convoy. The Virex commander appeared, mandibles spread in threat display. This corridor is under Virex enforcement. Withdraw. Myra's voice remained calm. This convoy carries medical aid. Your enforcement endangers civilians. They are not under your jurisdiction. They are under our protection. A brief pause followed, heavy with implication. Sarin's eyes narrowed. You test us. Mira shook her head. You misread us. She cut the channel and gave a single command. Deploy shield lattice. A web of energy unfurled around the convoy, overlapping fields reinforcing one another in elegant geometry. The pirate fleet hesitated, sensing the shift in balance. Jalen leaned closer. We can hold, but a prolonged engagement won't be necessary, Mira said. She was right. Saren recalled his ships. The silence that followed was not defeat. It was calculation. News of the standoff raced through council networks, stripped of context, bloated with rumor. To some, humanity had shown restraint. To others, defiance. Kale read the conflicting accounts late into the cycle, crest aching with fatigue. The pattern was emerging. Wherever the council hesitated, humans acted. Wherever exploitation lingered, it vanished. They were not conquering. They were correcting. And that frightened the old powers more than invasion ever could. Because correction implied judgment. A private channel request chimed. Kale accepted. Rourke's image formed, crisp and unadorned. You sent us coordinates today, Rourke said. Yes. Why? Kale considered the question carefully. Because for the first time, I trusted the outcome. Rourke inclined his head slightly. That trust will cost you. I know, Kale replied. But it may also save us. Rourke studied him for a moment, then ended the transmission. Kale leaned back, staring at the starfield beyond the chamber's arc. The galaxy was learning a new language, one without treaties or theatrics. It was the language of action. And humanity was speaking it fluently. The first shot of the new war was never fired. It was calculated. Warlord Saren did not believe in symbols unless they bled. Restraint, to the Virex warcast, was a weakness taught by species too afraid to finish conflicts they began. Humanity's refusal to retaliate after the convoy standoff unsettled him more than open defiance. Silence invited correction. He chose the target carefully. Kepri Delta was a border system, lightly populated, rich in raw volatiles and poor in defenders. Humans had established a civilian logistics hub there weeks earlier, nothing military on record. Medical depots. Evacuation lanes. A promise quietly kept. Saren intended to break that promise. Deploy suppression group, he ordered. No warnings. The Virex fleet cut from folded space like blades tearing silk. Orbital platforms shattered under coordinated fire, their automated distress calls screaming into the void. On Kepri Delta Station, alarms howled. Gravity fluctuated. Civilians were thrown against bulkheads as the habitat shuddered. Director Hannah Okoye grabbed a railing as the lights flickered. Status! A technician's voice cracked. Multiple hull breaches on Ring 2. Evac corridors compromised. Hannah steadied herself. Transmit priority distress. All channels. They won't answer in time. Someone whispered. Hannah clenched her jaw. Send it anyway. The message reached Admiral Rourke in under 6 minutes. He watched the feed without expression as explosions blossomed against the station's curve. Civilians scrambling. Smoke venting into vacuum. Amara Voss stood beside him, pale. This is escalation. Rourke nodded once. Yes. A junior officer broke protocol. Sir, rules of engagement? Rourke's voice was even. No strikes on population centers. Neutralize hostile assets. Preserve lives. The officer hesitated. And the council? Rourke finally looked away from the feed. They chose to watch. Signal Captain Chin. He continued. Full task force. Now. Captain Marichin felt the shift before the order arrived. The Resolute Dawn's engines deepened in tone, power rerouted, systems aligning with practiced efficiency. Confirmed hostile strike, Jalen reported. Virex signatures match Saren's fleet. Myra's jaw tightened. He wanted a line crossed. She opened a channel. All units, form shield envelope around Kepri Delta. Civilian evacuation takes priority. A chorus of acknowledgments followed. Human ships arrived not as a spearhead but as a wall. Energy lattices unfolded in layered arcs, absorbing incoming fire, bending trajectories away from fragile hulls. The Virex fleet adjusted, surprised by the density of defense. Counterfire? Jalen asked. Maris shook her head. Not yet. The Virex commander hailed them, mandibles flared in triumph. You hide behind shields while your station dies. Mira met his gaze on the screen. You're mistaken. It's still standing. Saren sneered. For now. That was when space itself changed. From behind the human formation, the rift chains shimmered. Not violently. Precisely. Gravity twisted into controlled curvature, a phenomenon the Council had deemed impossible. Human strike vessels emerged without flare or warning. Saren's triumph evaporated. What is that? He demanded. Myra's voice carried calm certainty. The cost of assuming we feared the dark. The human ships did not fire wildly. They targeted propulsion arrays, weapon cores, command relays. One by one, Virex vessels went silent, drifting, intact but helpless. Saren's flagship attempted to retreat. It failed. A human cruiser slid into its path, disabling its drives with a single focus pulse. Mira opened the channel again. Stand down. You've lost. Saren's eyes burned. You dare dictate terms? No, Mira said. We end harm. She cut the feed. Within 12 minutes the battle was over. No human ship destroyed. No civilian casualty after the shield envelope stabilized. The Virex fleet floated, disarmed, humiliated. The aftermath was louder than the battle. Council channels erupted. Accusations? Emergency motions. Calls for sanctions that no longer applied. Kael'Thur watched the footage in stunned silence. He had expected brutality, retaliation soaked in blood. Instead, he saw precision. They could have annihilated them, a counselor whispered. Kael nodded. They chose not to. 8 voices overlapped. This sets precedent. Yes, Kael said. And exposes us. The truth settled like a weight. The Council's monopoly on force had ended, not through conquest, but competence. Rourke addressed the galaxy not through the Council, but openly. His broadcasts bypassed political filters, carried by neutral relays and civilian networks. This message is for those who watched Kepri Delta, he said. We responded because lives were threatened. We stopped when the threat ended. Behind him, footage played. Evacuees boarding shuttles. Engineers sealing breaches. Virex ships floating intact, crews alive. We will not pursue conquest. We will not enforce ideology. We will act when harm is done and restraint is ignored. He paused, eyes steady. If you test that boundary, you will not like the answer. The transmission ended. Saren sat in captivity, restrained by fields he could not comprehend. Across from him, Amara Voss observed, tablet in hand. You've proven your point, Saren growled. You're strong. Amara looked up. That was never in question. Then why spare us? Because fear teaches nothing, she said. Consequences do. Saren laughed bitterly. The Council will never forgive this. Amara met his gaze. We're not seeking forgiveness. On Kepri Delta, Director Hannah Okoye watched the last evacuation shuttle depart. The station still bore scars, but it lived. She opened a channel to Mira. You kept your promise. Mira allowed herself a breath. We intend to. Hannah hesitated. What happens now? Mira looked out at the stars, where human ships held quiet watch. Now the galaxy decides what kind of future it wants. Kael stood alone in the council chamber long after the others left. The great hall felt smaller now, its echoes hollow. Humanity had crossed a line the council never believed anyone would dare cross. They had acted without permission and proven they did not need it. Kael understood the danger clearly. The galaxy had not just met a new power. It had met a new standard. And once seen, standards could not be unseen.